We have today with us Heather Caprette, and Heather will be presenting implementing a plan for digital accessibility. Thank you so much for being here, Heather.
Thank you. Thank you to QM for inviting me to speak. And thank you all QM members for joining me at 2 p.m. in the afternoon when everybody's in their after lunch slump. So usually accessibility is a painful subject, and I hope it's not painful, but it gets easier the more familiar you are with it. I work as a senior instructional designer at CSU Online, and I volunteered as an accessibility advocate at my institution. And I've been really fortunate in having opportunities to take professional development on accessibility and then be able to take what I've learned and apply it to our technology and our platform and create professional development courses for our faculty and our staff. So my goals for us today is to explain what accessibility means, explain the laws and standards that ask for accessible online content, and then in the second half or latter 2/3, I want to go through the accessibility standards and share resources and methods for implementing accessibility at your institution. So what is accessibility? It's the degree to which a product, service, or facility is available to all people. So in online design, it's the degree to which our learning management system and our online content is accessible and available to people with disabilities. So the Office for Civil Rights, in a resolution agreement with South Carolina Technical College System, said accessible means a person with a disability is afforded the opportunity to acquire the same information, engage in the same interactions, and enjoy the same services as a person without a disability in an equally effective and equally integrated manner with substantially equivalent ease of use. That's a mouthful. But it does comprehensively explain what we should be doing. So what is a disability? It's a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So you can see from looking at this list on screen that we are all aging into disability. And what we'll focus on for the purpose of online accessibility in our courses is making them accessible to people with motor impairments, vision and hearing loss, and people with learning and reading disabilities. Pardon me. So why should we design accessible experiences? If you've ever been excluded from an activity that you wanted to participate in, you'll recognize why it's the right thing to do. So for anybody who's joined me who does not have vision, right now I'm showing a picture of a boy in a wheelchair, and he's looking at kids playing on a swing set, and no part of the swing set was designed to accommodate somebody that's in a wheelchair. So, in education, we want everybody to have the ability to learn and grow and succeed in life. Moreover, it's the law. So what are those laws that apply to us that we have to meet? There is Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 that says that colleges and universities that receive federal funds need to ensure that people with disabilities can participate in programs and activities and have the same benefits that people without disabilities have. So it's like very similar to what the Office for Civil Rights said is accessibility. And then subpart E says that we have to be prepared to make adjustments and accommodations for people with disabilities to participate fully in our programs. Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act deals with electronic information and communication technology. So it's saying that our websites and the content in our online courses needs to be accessible. So Section 508 rules were updated in 2017 to point to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, known as WCAG 2.0 at level AA. So these are a set of global standards that people around the world follow to ensure accessibility of their online content. And it's a set of success criterions, little, yes, statements that talk about functionality of your interface. And there's 3 levels of conformance. So there's level A, which is the minimum that you would have to do to comply and conform. AA is better, and AAA is the best or most accessible. WCAG revolves around 4 accessibility principles, and you can remember them with the acronym POUR. So P is for perceivable. So the information and the elements, components of the user interface have to be perceivable. They also have to be operable. You know, the person using a screen reader can't get stuck in your interface and not be able to move forward or complete the tasks that they need to do for that learning activity. The interface and the information needs to be understandable to them, and it has to work across a multitude of assistive technologies and browsers. So that's what robust stands for. And they just updated WCAG to 2.2 yesterday. They published additional guidelines. So we're just worrying about WCAG 2 at level AA. Quality Matters has General Standard 8 that asks that the course design utilizes principles of accessibility and usability, reflecting a commitment to ensuring diverse learners can access course content and activities and can easily navigate and interact with course components. So this is all copyrighted information. Please don't share this publicly online. So I want to stop at this point. I have an image. It's a metaphor, really. So it's a person sitting at a desk working on a computer, and there's trash piling up around them, and clothing is strewn on the sofa and the floor, and they have like coffee cups and empty soda bottles sitting around their room. So they've just neglected to take care of it. But if you all want to type in chat, like, what are some of the challenges either to getting started with accessibility or implementing accessibility at your institution? So I'm just going to take a look at chat now and see if anybody wants to share. If nobody wants to share, I can talk about some of the things that I've encountered, you know, even personal feelings about like time commitment. So a lot of people, knowledge on how to check whether things are accessible. Yes. Thank you, Kate. Web pages. Okay, for instance, web pages they link to. So I think she's talking about using descriptive text links here, possibly. Yes,
Yeah,
awareness.
you have to click on, I'm sorry, when you have to click on the source code, that intimidates a lot of our, you know, professors and stuff, and check to see if the website has the right descriptions when we're linked to it.
Okay, like inspecting the code for an accessibility check.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, awareness of WCAG, the time it takes to fix inaccessible files and documents, yes. Lack of general understanding about what accessibility means, hard to get the information out in such large organizations, how it varies between technologies and how to actually get support. Whose responsibility it is to resolve, and seeing that a file is rated low accessibility in the LMS, but not knowing how to remediate it. Ally is a good product for that. We have that here, and it gives an accessibility score for your content in the LMS and your documents in the LMS. but it gives just-in-time feedback on how to fix those problems. And a lot of accessibility checkers do that even in like Word and PowerPoint, Microsoft Office products. So like in PowerPoint, you go under File and check Info, I think, and look for my memory's not good here. Check for issues and check accessibility, and then it runs a check and tells you what's wrong and gives you tips on how to fix it. Word has one too. Let's see. Some stakeholders want to wait until students request accommodations versus being proactive. Yep. Yes, we used to think we only needed to set up the class if someone told us they needed it. And it's in the review menu and Microsoft Office products. Yes, okay, thank you all for sharing. So in general, you know, there is like a time issue, right? Like we're all challenged because we're trying to fit so much into our schedule. So you're not alone. I mean, we're all in it together, and there's lots of institutions that have tutorials and resources on the web, including Quality Matters. And you can consider these just-in-time resources for faculty to learn more about how to make things accessible. And it might take a student with a disability being in their course for them to like get interested and try to learn these techniques. You can put accessibility checklists on a website somewhere on your Center for E-Learning website, perhaps, and they can go through that. Those could have short steps on what to do to meet each checkpoint. Like at our university, I volunteered to go through accessibility training and then create short courses, creating accessible Word document course, a creating accessible PowerPoints presentations course, and we have Ally. So we have a short course on getting familiar with Ally. And those are like 1 or 2 weeks. And my supervisor, the director of the Center for E-Learning, she went to higher administration, and she was very lucky. She got $500 stipends for people to take our short courses. So if they complete 3 successfully, then they get an extra $500 in their paycheck eventually. But if you're short on resources, you can always nominate faculty and staff at your institution who have been striving to make their courses and content accessible to students with disabilities. So OSU back in the early 2000s had something called a Unity Award that was issued by their ADA coordinator. And it was the students with disabilities that would nominate those faculty or staff members for that award. So let me advance onward and talk about Quality Matters resources on accessibility. So I was talking about those just-in-time resources for faculty and staff. There's a QM accessibility and usability resource site, the RS course, and you can register for that through My QM. You go to select workshop and find that course. And then once you log into their portal, you click on the classroom, it takes you to Canvas and it shows up in your list of courses. So the content in there will help you meet the specific review standards for General Standard 8. They also have a short online, I took it online about 10 years ago. It's a workshop for addressing accessibility and usability. So if you want more hands-on activity and applying accessible formatting to content, course content, that would be a good one to take. That's only, I think it's 165 for members. QM recently came out with a new book called Guide to Digital Accessibility, Policies, Practices, and Professional Development. And it was edited by Drs. Ray Mancia and Barbara Frey. This book, it's like a really nice short handbook that you can have next to you. And it was written by QM members that are just sharing their best practices for policies and professional development and tools that you can use at your institution also. And you get a 20% discount for that book. Thank you for the link to the R site. You can get a 20% discount if you're a member of Quality Matters if you email research@qualitymatters.org to get a code for that, and it'll bring the price down under $32 for that handbook. QM also has a set of 3 white papers, and this is based in survey research that was done before the pandemic, and it summarizes the accessibility policies and practices of QM member institutions, and they make recommendations within the white papers. I believe these were done by Ray and Barbara also. Okay, so I'm going to go through the specific review standards now for General Standard 8, and the very first one is 8.1. It asks that our course navigation facilitates ease of use. So this involves using consistent layout and design and repetitive elements for recurring activities. Our learning management system does that for us. Like we have little chat bubble icons for discussions, and we have these document icons with lines of text for our documents that we post to our learning management system. But we also can take control over that through our titles, what we use in our titles. So this slide on the left shows a module for within Ultra. We came from Blackboard original learning management system, and we used to create these module organizers with the item tool that would reside at the top of the learning module, and it would specify exactly where they were at and list the learning objectives and the activities that the students had to do. And Blackboard Learn Original had a breadcrumb trail at the top that would help students navigate back through the course. So with Ultra, they did away with the breadcrumb trail. And so if we write the module number and all of the components or elements of our learning module, that helps the student remember where they're at. We've also learned that if you use the learning module tool instead of a content folder within Ultra, that you get a really nice arrow, which is seen here in the upper right, that helps students progress through the learning module. It's more friendly than having to constantly X out or close out of a document or a page and go back to the main screen in order to get to the next element in the learning module. Also, to help with course navigation, we should use descriptive hypertext link. So please don't ever link the words click here or read more. If you get multiple click here's or multiple read mores on a page, it gets hard for people who use screen readers to navigate that type of page. And I'll show you here in a moment what that looks like for them. Reserve underline style for link text. I've seen a lot of instructors who want to underline text that they want to stand out. It's just important text they want the reader to see and recognize. You have to avoid that type of styling. So on this slide, the top paragraph shows those click here links that you should avoid. And then the bottom paragraph shows descriptive text links. And those are Copyright Advisory Network's website, Fair Use Evaluator, and Fair Use Chart at Wheaton's Buzzwell Library. And on the right is a floating window that somebody who uses JAWS can bring up. And what it does is it takes all the links out of context and reads them out to them so that they can navigate faster. Kate has a question. Yes, Kate, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just a little confused about this one because I thought for a while we were told not to like link the phrase itself, that we had to say there's a link coming up, like can be found on the link and then name it. Is that incorrect? That was a few years ago. So, because I had it
Um,
like that, remove those, and so I'm confused.
Whatever text you form into your link, it should really explain to the user what's coming up, what it's going to lead to.
Okay,
So however you want to word that, however it makes sense to you, just as long as it's descriptive.
okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't know if that helps or not, but yeah.
It
And
does.
these slides are available for you guys. You can look at them later if you want to review. Also, 8.2 asks for readability. So what we do is we group similar content together and use white space. So like with our module organizer from the past slide, you could see we had like an overview of the topic for the module, and then we list out the learning objectives. And if you number them, then you can refer to the numbers that they're supposed to meet, right? And then following the measurable learning objectives are all the activities that the student has to do to complete the module. So those are also either bulleted or numbered. Try to avoid spelling errors, grammar and punctuation errors, and be careful about what font you use for on-screen legibility. So coming from a design background at OSU, my advisor said, stick with sans serif fonts for body text for legibility on screen. So font like Arial, Verdana, Tahoma, Myriad Web Pro, let's see, Open Sans is what I'm trying to think of. And then Roboto is another one. And then he would always tell me, you can get away with using serif fonts for some headings. So in that case, I would stick with Georgia or Times New Roman. We also want to use consistent heading and body styles. So when you're in Word, if you use Word's heading styles and the normal style to apply to your body text, that's going to help you stay consistent, because if you change your mind about the styling of a heading later and you modify that style in the styles pane in Word, it's going to update and apply to all of the headings that you already applied that style to. We want to be consistent with headers for activities and assessments. So if you are referring to rubrics, for example, as grading information, make sure you do that throughout your entire course. And let's see, a table of contents is included in a long document that allows easy navigation. So we have some folks at CSU that are authoring open educational resources, and we have a chemistry professor who's authoring in Word. So we've encouraged him to use those heading styles. And once you apply those heading styles in Word, if you go under the references ribbon, there is a tool for generating a table of contents very easily from the headings that you've marked up in your document. So also for readability, we have to be careful about the contrast between our text and the background color. For normal size font, which is 12 points, we would want a contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1. And for larger size text, which is 14 point bold or 18 point regular weight and higher, you can have a 3 to 1 contrast ratio between text and the background. Text is formatted to serve specific instructional purposes. So a lot of people tell me, I got to stick with black and white, right? I can't use color in my design. That's not true. You just have to be very consistent and purposeful in the way you use it and avoid color alone to convey meaning. So on this slide here, on the left is a screenshot from Pressbooks. And within Pressbooks are these call out blocks. And in this particular book on the left, they've used a green call out box for all of their examples throughout their chapters. And you can check color contrast by using a tool called Color Contrast Analyzer. It's a free download. It's linked in my slides, and it'll work for Windows and Mac. I like it because it has an eyedropper that you can click on and then sample the background color and then take the next eyedropper and sample the text color. And it gives you at the bottom the contrast ratio, and it gives a little check mark that tells you, have you passed WCAG standards or not? And then what you can do to adjust your colors is go into the hue, saturation, and lightness, and you can drag the lightness slider up or down wherever you need it to get to a dark enough color that it has enough contrast. You can also work in RGB if you feel comfortable with that, which stands for red, green, blue. Just be careful about blue links on like a light green background. I saw some of that in their book, which was not good. Standard 8.3, let's see, text in the course is accessible. So what I would encounter a lot looking at some of the courses at CSU was faculty wanting to be very helpful to their students and scan the articles that they wanted them to read in the course. They do this on the copier to produce a PDF, which it was an image of text that they were putting in their course. It didn't have searchable text. The people who use screen readers can't access that. So what I've done to try to steer people away from that is encourage the use of library permalinks. And that is a URL to the resource in the library's database. So you could do that for journal articles or ebooks. And if you don't have it in your library's database, there's also optical character recognition, which is available in Acrobat Pro. And our Office of Disability Services used ABBY Fine Reader, I believe is the name of the product. So this slide shows a screenshot of an article in our library's database. And if you look at the lower left, you'll see a link, it's called permalink. You click on that and it brings up the permalink URL at the top above the article. And you can copy and paste this URL into your learning management system as a web link for your students. So once they're authenticated into your university, they follow that permalink to the article that we've legitimately purchased and have access to. So this is a full text HTML document. And you'll notice right here, there's this read speaker playback bar. And so that will help people with dyslexia or people who have English as a second language. It reads the article back to them. This slide shows an example of one of those images of text that's open in Acrobat Pro. And you can use the Find Text tool, which is this magnifier in the upper left, to open up a little find window and then type in a word that you see on the page, such as multi-generational. And Acrobat will tell you if it finds it or not. If it doesn't locate it, it'll say, do you want to do OCR on this document, optical character recognition? And you can say yes and prompt it to do that to get searchable text. So we should always use heading styles to communicate the hierarchy within our document. And so these help people with screen readers navigate faster because they do that keyboard combination to bring up a list of headings on your page. It also helps people who are sighted. Like for example, in Word, if you mark up your headings, here I've highlighted the top name of this document, Syllabus for Nursing 440. And I've clicked on the heading 1 in the styles pane in Word. That applies heading 1 to that text. And then if you open the navigation pane in Word, you can easily jump to different sections that headings have been applied to. So Syllabus for Nursing 440 is a heading level 1, course information is heading level 2. Towards the bottom, you can see written assignments is heading level 2, and then assignment number 1, assignment number 2, assignment number 3. Those are heading level 3. You want to be careful about using color alone to convey meaning. I've seen this a lot with instructors putting text in red to make it stand out, which is good for people who are sighted. But for people who have color blindness, which can be 8% of the population of Northern European descent, have red-green color blindness, you want to create some other indicator next to that text, such as important or note or an asterisk before that text. Be sure to create simple tables in with your text. And that means not merging or splitting cells in tables. Have one row of headers across the top or one column of headers down the side. See, you can also provide context for a table with the caption field or an alt text field or a longer description. This slide shows a simple accessible table with one row of headers at the top, week, date, and topic. And it's a schedule for this course. And what the instructor did was put the dates for the tests in red font, red color. But also you can notice it's bolded and it has an asterisk before it to make it stand out for people who are colorblind. So that's one way to get around that. Standard 8.4 deals with image accessibility. So any image that conveys meaning has a function in your course needs to have alternative text. So you can create short alt text, which should be 150 characters or less in an alt text field. And always check this because Microsoft Office will automatically generate alt text for you. And sometimes it just doesn't get it right. So always check and change it to convey the meaning that you intend for that image within your document. More complex images will require longer descriptions, and you can sometimes get those in the captions beneath the images, but you can also provide them elsewhere in the document. They might be in the body text below the image. Our chemistry professor at CSU, who's writing his own textbook in Word, he's going to put his long descriptions in an appendix. And Word will allow you to create a bookmark. So if you create a bookmark for each long description, you can go back to where that figure or that image is within the body of the document and link to the bookmark at the end of the document in the appendix. This slide shows an example of a bar chart. So for alt text, very short, we might write distribution of preferred learning styles of first and final year nursing students. But then we also have to provide a longer description as seen here in the caption below it that explains what this image is conveying. So the preferred learning style of first and final year nursing students was reflector. That's a good point to make. And then it goes on to talk about the numbers of students from those two groups that prefer which category of learning style. The Diagram Center's website, it's freely accessible to everybody. I encourage you to check it out. They have examples of alt text for complex images. So maps and flowcharts and all sorts of diagrams and charts in there. So if you're looking for examples of how to do things, that's a good site to go to. Let's see, decorative images that don't convey meaning, such as like a flourish being used for a horizontal rule. If you have access to the HTML editor, look at the image tag and make sure it has the null alt attribute. So that's represented by alt equals and then quotation marks with nothing in between, no space, nothing. That tells the screen reader to skip over that graphic and not announce it to the person who is blind. Microsoft Office products have a little box that you can check off in their alt text pane that will mark it as decorative. but be sure to write decorative in the alt text field because older screen readers sometimes do not recognize that mark as decorative. Is there a minimum number of characters for alt text? I have seen different things. 150 stands out, 140 characters also stands out. I've even seen some people say keep it as short as 100 characters. Eventually the screen reader will stop reading after a certain number of characters. Okay, I'll keep progressing here. 8.5 asks that video and audio content in the course is accessible. For pre-recorded video, you want to have synchronized, accurate captions, including capitalization and punctuation. If you don't have access to a video that's on YouTube or Vimeo, there's a product called Amara. It's a website, amara.org, AMARA. And you can create a free account and you can caption somebody else's video and then use a link or an embed code to share in your course with your students. See, audio only, that's like podcasts. Those should have a transcript. And when you're writing your transcript, be sure to identify who the speaker is if you have more than one speaker. So like, here's an example of it. We write Joe, who's the student, colon, and then his words, I hate this computer. And then in brackets, how he expressed that, which is shouted. And then the second speaker would be the librarian who says, shh, and then in brackets, holding his finger to his lips. So with video, let's see, you're doing a video of a laboratory procedure and the narrator does not speak all of the steps that the learner has to do, important things. You should pause that video at that point and provide audio description of what's in the background that's important to that procedure. Okay, let's see, 8.6, multimedia in the course should be easy to use. A lot of players now have these features. We use Panopto at CSU. It allows the user to pause the video, to forward, rewind. It resizes with the browser, and it provides the captions. It even allows for increased or slowed down playback speed, which is nice because people who are blind and use screen readers, they often like to have faster speech. So they might speed it up to 2 times playback. Content should resize without loss of detail, shrink and expand. And then longer videos really should be broken down into shorter segments. So they say like 9 minutes or 20 minutes, but a lot of us are used to presenting for 45 minutes or 90 minutes even. If you can create bookmarks within your player, please do. We have Panopto at CSU, and it allows our instructors to edit the table of contents, which you see here on the left. And it also automatically pulls the titles out of the PowerPoint slides and creates that table of contents automatically. So the instructor is allowed to create additional entries and also adjust the timing of the table of contents. And standard 8.7, vendor accessibility statements are provided for the technologies used in the course. So like Microsoft has really good documents on their site about how to use their technology. So if you can find that type of vendor resource, provide it in the course. You know, it could tell somebody how to navigate a product if they're using a keyboard, for example. If you can find the VPAT, which is the Voluntary Product Accessibility Template, that is a report that's generated by an accessibility testing company, and they find issues with the product. So it might tell you where people are going to stumble and have problems with the product. So at CSU, we have an accessibility resources page in our CSU course template, which we encourage instructors to use for their course design. And at the top, I've put a link to our Office of Disability Services. I have a link to information about getting accommodation and a link to our accessibility policy, as well as links to our technologies accessibility statements. So Blackboard Learn, Collaborate is our web conferencing system. We have Microsoft Office products, and we use Panopto, HonorLock, and Respondus. Okay, I do have some resources at the end of my document, which you can peruse at your leisure. That will help you. And here's my contact information. So what I want to do now is just ask, does anybody have any questions for me? I'll peek at chat and see if I can see what's in here, what people are coming up with here. Oh, thank you, Cameron. Thank you, guys. Does anybody want to turn on their mic and ask a question right now?
Hi, yes. I just have a quick question. This is Stephen Bradford. What about text size? I noticed you mentioned a lot of other different things, but no one ever mentions about the size of text you should be using. I know like standard is 12, but I don't know if that's.
Yeah, I like this. Like if I'm in Word, I like to stick with 12-point font or even like Storyline, like if we build lessons in Storyline. I try to avoid anything beneath that. I know there's magnifiers that people use, and they can certainly enlarge the text in the browser. Like you can move it up to like 120% or more. Yeah, does that help? Like if you're a web designer, with web design, I encourage designers to use EMS, which is a relative font size rather than points or pixels. So like if you're doing HTML programming or coding, if you use like 1M, that is, if I'm remembering correctly, 16 pixels or 12-point font. So if you use, like 1.5M, I forget what it goes up to. I had a chart. I have a chart and it's online somewhere, but it will respond to increases in when people manipulate their browsers, their font size that their browser displays. It'll respond to that and get larger if you use relative font sizes. Does that answer?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Sorry, I don't want to confuse people. Anybody else?
For me, the hardest part, this is Kate Branham again, like I said, is wanting to use outside resources. It's getting better. Now more outside resources are themselves like websites or modules are in good shape. But a lot of times, like I remember trying to use something from United Nations Women and it wasn't, it wasn't set up at all. And it's supposed to be 100% of the stuff we link to should be accessible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
getting better though.
Yeah, it is. Wave is a browser extension you can install, and if you run that, you'll see some issues that people can encounter. It flags
check that
things.
out.
And yeah, I think, is it University of Utah WebAIM develops that? But if you just Google Wave Evaluator, it'll pop up. And if you have the extension installed in Chrome or Firefox, then it'll even evaluate web pages that are password protected. So if you have to log in to get to a web page or a portal through a portal, you can still evaluate it.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, thanks. I'm there now.
Yeah. And you can ask, you can use a contact form and ask their developers to fix something that you find is a problem. Cool. They may or may not do it. Okay. Okay, yes, thank you everybody for sharing the links in the chat to the R's site and the guide to digital accessibility. That's all very helpful. Okay, so if nobody else has any questions, I'll be respectful of your time and just say thank you again for coming to this presentation.
Okay, anyone has one last question before we wrap up today? Heather, thank you so much. Very informative, great information, lots of great questions and interaction. And we really do appreciate you coming and doing that presentation today. I hope I can see everyone at our wrap up today, starting at 3:20. So you do have a couple minutes to go get a fresh cup of coffee or tea. And oh, I thought Melissa, are you trying to ask a question?